Support and ADC synergy is probably the most important factor for selecting your champion on bot lane. Any given ADC's win rate can swing as much as 11% depending on what support they are paired with. While this has a lot to do with the win rate of the support themselves, there's also a lot of bot lane duos that just really punch above their collective weight when paired together due to the massive synergy that they have with each other. And on the flip side, there are also some pairings who just really suck more than they should when working together. So in this video, I'm going to tell you the top 5 supports for every ADC pick so you know what ADCs you should have in mind once your support is locked in their champion. Whether they work together to absolutely decimate the opposing laners in the early game or skill up together to completely dominate the late game, here are the best duos for all 21 AD carries. Get used to seeing Xayah, Sona, Xayah, and Soraka a lot in these lists because they are the highest win rate supports right now and will feature prominently. Ezreal tends to not really give a crap what his support is, so it's not too shocking that the top 4 win rate supports feature in his top 5. Zilean appears to punch a little above his weight though, and I'm guessing that's related to the massive amount of high intensity slows and stuns in his kit, giving Ezreal an easy time landing his skill shots. Jhin absolutely loves being paired with mages because his supportive kit can enable them to wreak havoc. He also loves hard CC to enable him to land a free W, so it's no surprise seeing the mage support with the easiest to land CC being at the top of the list for him. His W is also super easy to land off of slows, so watch out for things like Xerath W or Valko's Q to combo your W off of in order to get the most out of these deadly Jhin duos. Misfortune loves lockdown, so it's no surprise that 4 out of 5 of these champions can keep an opponent locked down long enough for Misfortune ult to do nasty damage. Sona is an amazing support in general right now with a great ult synergy. Maokai is a lockdown support who's in a great state right now, whether he itemizes for poke or tankiness. Xayah is a mage support in a great state who also provides huge lockdown after level 6. Renata is decent right now with a great synergizing ult, and Blitzcrank is a hook support with brief lockdown who also happens to be in a great state at the moment. Honorable mentions to Leona and Nautilus who unfortunately don't make the cut in 12.8 due to not being in a great state right now, but were all supports equally balanced, they would probably be in her top 2 best supports as they have some of the longest lockdown durations of any support to synergize with their ultimate. Jinx benefits a lot from peeling supports as an immobile carry, so it's no surprise to see so many enchanters here. With Xayah, she can also easily establish control over a lane and bully the opponents with her large range, and Xayah's root makes her able to easily combo her traps compared to with other mage supports. Honorable mention to Thresh, who could feature here if he wasn't in a terrible state right now since his lantern fixes Jinx's lack of mobility in many situations. Lucian ever since his mini rework is insanely niche in what supports he works well with. He relies entirely on being paired with supports who can easily activate his on-hit passive. Sona belongs in her own tier for how well she pairs with Lucian right now since all of her abilities proc his passive on a low cooldown. Lucian and Sona are the best bot-lane duo in the game by far right now, and it's not even close. Yumi, Nami, and Soraka are then on their own level 2, significantly worse than Sona, but notably better than Renata, who's still a decent pick for him. However, besides Janna, there aren't really any other supports he performs particularly well with, so you'll want to make sure you're picking him with those 5 to 6 supports as much as possible. Kai'Sa has always favored supports with CC who can help her stack up her passive, so the only surprise here is that there aren't more of them. Sona and Xerath stand out as not being too helpful in that regard, but Sona will skill up with Kai'Sa to make for a scary double threat in the late game, while Xerath can help her dominate lane phase. Renata meanwhile can provide 2 passive stacks for her with just 1 ability, and unlocks the ability to provide a 3rd at level 6. Caitlyn loves 2 things, which are mage supports and mage supports with CC. Mages benefit a lot from ADCs who can wipe out a wave and let them poke the enemy bot under their turret, and ADCs like Caitlyn appreciate a support who can help them poke away at the enemies and shove in those waves, so they're a match made in heaven. Morgana is in the weakest state of any of those other picks, which is why she's at the bottom, but her synergy with Caitlyn is immense, as a single root followed by a trap can be an instant kill combo in many matchups. Honorable mention to Lux, who just barely didn't make it into the top 5, but works fantastically with Caitlyn for the same reason Morgana does. Vayne is another ADC who loves peeling supports, so once again enchanters feature prominently here, especially Soraka who can keep her alive until she's done melting the enemy bot lane. Notice how just as with Jinx, Xayah features here over Xerath, despite Xerath being a stronger champion overall at the moment. This is because Xayah provides many of the usual strengths of a mage support but is also far better at peeling her carry, especially after level 6. This means that she synergizes better with ADCs that need peel than the other mages do. Samira is the most reliant ADC in the game on laning with a support that provides lockdown, so it makes sense for 4 different lockdown supports to feature here, including 3 supports, Nautilus, Rell, and Alistar, that are unique to her and don't appear in the top 5 for any other ADC. So you might be surprised to see that her number 1 support is actually an enchanter, Renata, rather than another lockdown support as you'd expect. However, they work fantastically together as Renata Q counts as a displacement for her to combo her passive with, and her W allows Samira to go wild, especially as the death prevention portion doesn't interrupt Samira's ultimate. which makes it very easy for Samira to finish off her opponents and come back to life. Honorable mention to Taric as well, whose win rate was literally identical to Blitzcrank's here, and so technically was tied for top 5. He also has great synergy with Samira as her targeted dash makes his E-stun impossible to miss. Although Tristana is most commonly picked with engaged supports, she actually synergizes best with enchanters and mages. While her all-in playstyle on the surface may seem to synergize best with engaged supports, her E-passive proves to be quite a foil to that. Engaged supports need lanes that are either neutral or frozen in order to pressure with their engage, but Tristana cannot help but constantly shove waves under the enemy's turret, where your Nautiluses and your Alistars can't be of any help if turret diving isn't on the menu. Instead, she works best with mage supports who appreciate the pushed lane, or with enchanters who will appreciate her immense early game strength to get them safely to late game. Blitzcrank is the exception, as he can hook people away from their turret and one-shot them. Xayah works well with almost any support, but her synergy with Lockdown shows its hand here as 2 Lockdown supports, Blitzcrank and Maokai, make it into her top 5 despite being closer to top 15 supports of the patch than the top 5. Whether she's building lethality or crit, Xayah appreciates a support who can buy her time to stack her feathers behind an opponent in order to burst them down. That being said, she's flexible enough that she'll work decently enough whether paired with a Lockdown support, enchanter, or a mage support. Honorable mention to Rakan, who would probably be in the top 5 if he weren't shit. Soraka Qs are pretty much impossible to dodge while slowed, which is why she features as Ashe's #1 support even after her nerf. It's less that Ashe loves Soraka, and more that Soraka loves Ashe. Then we have 3 mage supports who also love Ashe because their abilities are also much harder to dodge when they're slowed. Renata seems to be all the rage for squishy ADCs who prefer long drawn out fights. Renata's W can enable Twitch to stay alive longer and finish off people with his ultimate, to ultimately come back to life. Her W's attack speed and movement speed also let him effectively chase people down when he wants to assassinate them. Besides that, we see a full enchanter lineup, which tells you a lot about what Twitch likes. He appreciates supports who can buff him up for his stealth plays and help him scale to late game. Honorable mention to Yuumi, who is definitely one of, if not his best, supports when he's going AP. Draven is another ADC who loves enchanters. If his support can peel the enemies off of him or heal him through all their damage, Draven will quickly make short work of all enemies around him. All he needs is a support who can keep him alive. Xayah again once features here as the mage support with the best peel. Sivir really appreciates either lockdown or slows that help her land her Q. Her Q has high range and deals high damage even when going through minions, so she can always use it at a moment's notice if her support can set it up for her. Honorable mention to Ashe support because she was in the top 7 and quite frankly I was so impressed by that I found it worth a mention. I guess Ashe W must be a pretty good and easy setup for Sivir Q. Aphelos is another ADC that appreciates enchanters, good at keeping their ADC alive, and his laning phase must benefit a lot from the tools mage supports bring to the table since 2 of them appear here. Honorable mention to Thresh for the same reason as Jinx. His lantern fixes Aphelos' greatest weakness of lack of mobility, and he would definitely feature here if he weren't in a terrible state for solo queue at the moment. Xayah loves shields, and she loves sustained supports who can keep her healthy and ready to fight, which makes Sona her best support by far as she provides both. Less valuable but still good are the rest of her top 5 all enchanters who also provide either shields or heals for her. Varus thrives when he's poking the enemies in the turret with Q as they lost hit, so it makes sense to see 4 supports with wave clear here. The mages especially thrive as his ultimate is the perfect setup for their burst, while the enchanters provide more of a scaling path for their lane. Kai'sa and Taric have immense synergy because she can dash his E right into the enemies, and with enough attack speed on her part, it's very hard for them to avoid it. Taric ult also buys her a lot of time to keep stacking spears in her enemies. She loves extended fights and Taric ult is the best extender there is. To top it all off, Taric does a ton of damage when he can get into melee range of his opponents. His only issue is getting there, so Kai'sa ultimate hurling him right into the enemies is a wet dream for him. Explaining their synergy took a whole paragraph so you can see why he features as her top 1 support. Their synergy together is so great that despite both of them being bad in solo queue, their win rate together is actually similar to many other respectable duos in this video. The fact that Kai'sa is by far Taric's highest win rate ADC duo, despite being in the bottom 6 ADC win rates, just goes to show how insane they are as a duo and how much they would dominate the meta if either one of them was in a good spot for solo queue. But moving on to the rest of her top 5, Renata with her W is another great fight extender, as is Soraka's heals, and Blitzcrank is good because he actually makes use of her ultimate, whereas Sona is good because Sona is good in general. She doesn't really have too much synergy with Kai'sa, but she's in a better state than many of the picks that do. Kog'maw is another ADC that appreciates Renata's ability to extend fights with her W. Kog'maw and Lulu are one of the OG duos that became known to terrorize bot lane back in the day and are still really good to this day despite Lulu not being amazing right now. And besides that, we see the typical 3 enchanter culprits that shine at keeping their ADC alive, which is exactly what Kog'Maw needs as a squishy and mobile ADC. That covers all of the ADCs, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what videos you want to see next. I've got so many projects planned already that I know many of you will love, so stick around for those. Until next time, gamers.